This is Charlie Parsons for the Stomping Ground, powered by Wow Hydrate and available on DAZN. The big dog, Matchroom CEO, is that right? Matchroom Boxing CEO, Mr. Francis Smith. How are you,
Yeah,
sir?
matchroom boxing. I haven't quite made it to the top of the ladder yet, mate. I'm just on the edge. But all is good, mate. How are you?
All is good, my friend. All is good. What have you been up to this week off the back of a mad week in Riyadh?
Busy, actually. Busy. Lots going on. Lots happening this week. Lots of planning for 2025. Lots of meetings. Lots of interesting stuff happening. So yeah, was out for dinner with Derek Chisora last night as well, my old mate. So yeah, busy week and looking forward to what's to come.
Let's recap off the back of last week. Now, there was a lot of emotion and tensions running high after Saturday night, which there always is. And I suppose we can sometimes speak too abruptly in the moment. I'm still yet to watch the fight back. I had Bivol winning. I know Eddie obviously did. He voiced that quite clearly. A lot of people were saying it was a closer fight than suggested. People still leaning towards Bivol. Obviously, he handled it tremendously. He launched his appeal, which we'll go into, and everything for a rematch, not for the judges' decisions to be overturned. What did you make of it, and what's your reaction now, having a bit of time away?
Yeah, look, I think firstly, what a week, what a build up to that event. And I think the fight got what it deserved in terms of the spectacle it became. It was built into something really big, which is what it deserved for the fight it was. To begin with, it was a fight that amongst boxing hardcores was the best fight really in the sport, or one of the best fights in the sport this year, last few years. But it got built into what it deserved to be. I think Look, I thought Dimitri Bivol won the fight, but it was a close fight in parts. Depends as well on what you score. I think the biggest thing was the scorecards, or that 116, 112 scorecard where he's been given 4 rounds by Pavel Gardini, which is absolutely insane, really. And I think it would have been a different reaction had that scorecard not have been there. Look, I think it's mad that not one judge scored it for Dimitri Bivol when everyone at ringside really was sort of unanimous in their view that Dimitri Bivol had won the fight, if anyone had won the fight. But I think if it would have been a point, across the board, I don't think people would have argued. I think really it's that scorecard for me, and it's how do we, as a sport, improve moving forward? Because this is people's livelihood. This is people work their whole life to get to this point. And then when you see things like that, it's not good to see. And I think there has to be some kind of process that we go through where we say, how did you score it like that? And if you can give a justifiable opinion, reason why, fair enough. But there has to be a process, because how are we all sitting there going, Bivol's won by 2 rounds, say, and then on this guy's scorecard, it's 116, 112 to Beterbiev. But look, overall, a great fight. I think you saw with Dimitri Bivol's reaction, he's a respectful guy. He will always say, I could have done more. I could have, but that's who he is as a person. It's our job to, work for him and deliver the opportunity. So our focus now is to get the rematch.
Out of curiosity, you speak about, judges maybe being held a little bit more accountable. People pose, well, if they don't do that, there should be open scoring as such. All of these things definitely affect the way a fight goes. It's a difficult one, and it's just that age-old question that we're always going to have in boxing fights after, I don't want to say a questionable decision, but after a decision that leaves people speculating.
Yeah, but the only way you change a sport is actually by showing, like, as in, what's happened since then? Has anyone called Pavel Gardini in? Has anyone said to him, we'd like to sit down and understand how you did that? The problem is in this sport, a lot of it gets swept under the carpet. So we have Saturday night and then everyone moves on and nothing ever comes of it. But look, at the end of the day, it is subjective. So he could sit there, explain the reasons why, walk you through the fight for 36 minutes and show you why he scored it that way. And at that point, if it's justifiable, you can't argue it. But I think something has to happen, not just in this situation, in other situations as well. So we'll see. Hopefully they do take up some kind of process on it.
We know that an appeal was launched. It was an appeal at all the governing bodies to do a rematch. The IBF as I actually put out a tweet predicting that they would do something similar as they did with Canelo against William Skull. They did an IBF mandatory. They've called one now for Beterbiev, which means that if we see a rematch, the likelihood is it won't be for undisputed. Disappointed?
But hopefully there's a way of working through it. This is a fight that the world wants to see again. It was a great fight on Saturday night, and I believe it's only right that it happens again for undisputed. So hopefully there's a way of working through it. No disrespect to Michael Eifert, is it Eifert? Is that who the mandatory is? I think no one's really ever heard of him, and it's not for the benefit. In my opinion, look, rules are important for the sport. 100% rules are important, but at the same time, we're all working in a sport where we want to grow and build the sport, and it benefits everyone involved. And I think seeing a rematch of Bivol Beterbiev for the undisputed is a decision that benefits the sport. So let's see. We've been down this road a few times, as you say. So hopefully there's some sense there.
Out of curiosity, I know nothing to do with you this fight, but Ben Whittaker and Liam Cameron, myself and Oscar were speaking, and it's funny because if you'd have said that a Liam Cameron post-fight interview was going to do, towards 100,000 views, you would have thought that he'd won by emphatic knockout or something like that. There's still so much talk around the fight and with whether we see a rematch or anything. On Ben Whittaker's side, how do you perceive what went on Saturday night? We've seen the ankle strapped up at the airport. There's rumours that someone's phone was smashed. I don't really want to go into that too much, but what was your whole take on the course of Saturday night and everything that happened there?
I think the key, look, fair play to Liam Cameron because he was written off by a lot of people. My view on it is, and it's not Ben Whittaker's fault, he's been mismanaged in many ways in terms of matching. Like he's come out of the GB squad. He's an unbelievable fighter, obviously. And the fighters within that amateur system, they fight the best, constantly, right? They're fighting the best fighters. And because they're in the GB squad, they're a level above, and they've gone through a lot of hard fights to get to where they are. I think the issue is the way he's been matched since he's turned pro hasn't really given him any experience. And actually has taken, if you look at the people he was fighting pre-professional, I get they're two completely different fields. But you look at what he's done since he's turned professional, the opponents he's been in with, they're not good enough. Like Ben's taken a step back. And I'm not saying you don't have to go through a process of developing, learning the pro game. I get all of that. But the problem is you can't go from the opponents he was fighting then into a Liam Cameron. And in my opinion, the Liam Cameron fight was really no win for him. And that's not Liam Cameron's fault. Like Liam Cameron's was prior to his delay in his career, which he's been very open about the situation around. He was a great fighter who was doing good things. He's then had the delay. He's been very open about what he's been through. So if Ben Whittaker beat Liam Cameron, respectfully, everyone would have gone, well, he should have beaten him. He's been out the ring for X amount of years and he's had this, that, the other that he's been through. Of course you should have beaten him. You're on another level. And if what we saw happened, everyone's going to question, has Ben Whittaker really got it? And I don't really think it's not his fault. It's not Ben's fault. It's the way he's been sort of led. And at the end of the day, that comes down to matchmaking. And I think that's the biggest mistake they've made. Look, he gets his chance. I'm sure there'll be a rematch. Obviously, Liam signed with Queensbury now. And I think that's the fight to make. It's a massive fight when it comes around.
Can I play devil's advocate slightly? And this
That's your
is
job.
more, it's actually not, to be fair, but this is more a reflection on the way that British prospects are moved. Now, Ben Whittaker, who I believe the guy that he beat in the semis of the Olympics is now, I think he's in Eastern Europe. I could be wrong, by the way, but there's someone that he fought within that Olympic role.
Oh, you're saying it. I'll look it up.
And I believe he's on the verge, like fringe world level. Now, in the UK, we obviously have like your journeyman, then you have your first 10 round, and then you look at Southern area English. Do you almost feel like there's too much in between that sometimes gets in the way? Because, and I'll be honest, I could say sometimes at times Matchroom are maybe guilty of it a little bit, where you look at fighters and you think, well, really, you should be much further than you are at this point. Is there a problem in that? Like, I know Eddie's even come out and said he wants to be a little bit harsher and tougher with his matchmaking, in that maybe these guys are just given, like, I don't want to say too easy of a ride, but if you become static, look at, Josh-Dubois. There was a point in his career where people were going like, what's going on? Why isn't he stepping up? Do you think that's just maybe a bit of a problem with British boxing as a whole?
I think it's part of the problem of with so many broadcasters, so many promoters all vying for the same talent, that some people will give people an easier route to get there. I mean, when you look at some of the Olympians, we look at Galarian Fire as an example. He's now fighting Sonny Edwards in what, his 9th or 10th fight? Came straight into the sport, straight into 10 rounders, straight from that GB squad. Everyone's different. Everyone needs different, routes to go down. But look, since you said it, like looking at Ben's amateur record, he had 68 fights. And like, when you then compare him again, and then you say, for example, the guy you brought up, I think you're talking about, is it Imam Katayev, or is it Arlen Lopez? One of those two. That's because if that's one's,
I know that.
Yeah, well, they're the two people he fought, like one in the finals and the one before that in the semis. He, like I say, it's not his fault. The other issue is people spend so much money on a fighter, right? Signing a fighter, and then they don't actually have the money to get a good opponent. So you're not actually building them in the right way, because you've gone and done all your money signing that fighter, and you're going, right, we can't really afford a good opponent now. So who do we put him in with? I don't think it's British boxing as a whole. I think it's individuals. And I just think I don't think the right decisions have been made. And again, that's not Ben Whittaker's fault. Like, how can he prepare for a tough fight if the fights he's been put in against, he can do the things he's been doing. And by the way, what he's been doing with all the, messing around, like tapping people, has been good for his profile. But there has to be a level where you go, right, we've got that now. Now we need to focus on building him and making sure he gets the experience.
On that topic, then, you've got Pat McCormack, who I remember before he turned over was spoke about so highly, and is such a fantastic talent. It's been a little bit different with him, fair to say, because he's not been constantly active. I believe he was a silver medalist as well. Are you not looking at someone like a Pat McCormack now and thinking, right, these next 2 years, you've got to be, starting to push on to those world titles?
Yeah, 100%. Look, Pat's had a frustrating professional career, a frustrating professional start, because he's had a number of injuries where we've had delays, etc. When Pat's in the gym, when Pat's focused, everyone you speak to says how good Pat McCormack is. Look, he steps up, he's fighting William Herrera next week in Manchester. That's a real fight. That's a test. Herrera has had, I think, 19, 20 fights, something like that. That's a test for Pat McCormack. But we believe he's at that level where he can beat those kind of guys. And he's been going through a process, but I think every career is different. So I'm not saying there's a path with each fighter. It's not what I'm saying at all. I think it's just a case of when you bring these elite fighters out of the GB squad who have fought at such a high level for so long, and then you take them down this road of lower level opponents, does it give them a false sense of confidence? Maybe is one thing, or does it not allow them the opportunity to learn and grow and develop?
Fair enough. Where are you guys at with Conor Ben Eubank Jr.? We know His Excellency wants to make that for February. There's still a process to be had. I believe it's actually with UKAD as opposed to the British Boxing Board. When do you think this will be all sort of done with, and when, roughly in a dream world, when do you have this sort of fight announced, Frank?
Yeah, look, that process is always, any doping process has to go through UKAD in the UK. For the British Boxing Board of Control. So UKAD will be going through that now. And hopefully soon. I hate putting dates on it because we've done it so many times. Everyone goes, you keep saying the same thing time and time again. I feel like we're near the end now. We're closer to this end, to finishing and getting to where we need to be, and getting news on Conor Ben's next steps. Look, the natural fight is the Eubank fight. It's the biggest fight out there for both of them. And they both make it what it is. You know, both of them together make that fight what it is. They can't do it without each other, and I think that's the fight we'll see next, and hopefully early part of next year, and announced soon.
I said to you now, do you expect to see that for February?
I expect to see it next. I mean, again, it's hard with the timelines because you're kind of saying then everything has to play. I think I'm confident that the timelines will play out very soon and we'll get answers very soon. And yes, February, I hope, is where we sit.
Jake Paul, I believe, tried to settle up with Eddie Hearn, didn't work, and now he has countersued. Just from a matchroom legality standpoint, I'm sure you would have heard little whisperings in and around the office. Where are you guys at with this?
No, look, from what I can understand, look, I'm not an expert in US law. I've got to be honest with you. I'm not an expert in much. So US law is a bit of a stretch for me. From what I can understand, he's trying to use a piece of law that surrounds journalists and their right to free speech. Obviously, Jake Paul is not a journalist. He's a YouTuber or boxer or whatever you want to call him today, whatever he chooses to be today. And it doesn't mean you can just spread false information and lies about people. You know, so that'll be dealt with. The lawyers who are much more intelligent than me will deal with that, I'm sure. But yeah, all fun and games in boxing as always.
I spoke to Frank Warren on Tuesday, I would like to say, and I just asked his recap of the whole week to do with promoter politics as such. Something that came up was, for example, he mentioned that there are contracts that Ben Shalom and Boxer put in that says Eddie Hearn can't be in a photo of a face-off with their fighters, or stuff like that left me sort of asking, how do you sue on grounds like that? We know last week Frank was very coy. He's come out and taken more of a vocal approach as such. It was quite obvious to see that, you guys didn't get on last week. What is your take on it all? And, you've been quite outspoken towards Ben in the past. I mean, has anything changed off the back of last week? What's your thoughts of it all?
I have said a lot of things in the past that I will never, I don't take back. I'm not that kind of person. I'm very open and honest. I think, I watch a lot of the stuff now. I see a lot of the clips from all different sides, and Ben's very much playing a victim in all this. Right, I'm just a nice guy. I'm just trying to make it, and it's all about the fighters. And you have to ask yourself why there is such a sort of unanimous view of Ben Shalom within the boxing industry as a whole, and the way he operates, right? It all comes down to the way he operates. I've always been quite open. I think he lies. He's a pathological liar, and that's why a lot of people don't like dealing with him. He says about this whole thing in Saudi being blocked out. I mean, let's just go back to December of 2023, yeah? Where we have had 15 years or 20 years or whatever it is of back and forth with Frank Warren and Queensberry, right? Whether we knew each other or not, imagine the stuff that's been said over 15 years, right, about each other. And we went into that process and said, right, again, I know people, of course, money comes into boxing. Of course it does. We're a business just like everything else. But at the same time, there's been a lot said between all parties over the last 15 years, right? So if anyone was going to have a problem working together, who do you think it would be? Matchroom and Queensberry. Actually, we all went in there and we went, let's just do what's for the good of boxing and let's do great business, right? And we all got along and we made things happen because we're reasonable people. And at the heart of it, we want what's best for boxing and we want what's best for our fighters. And we made it all work. And now we have a good relationship. But imagine back to December of 2023, we're all coming together in a room for the first time. I know there was some stuff in November, but we're all in a room and actually just going, right, let's get on with this. Let's be grown-ups. And that's the truth of it. We're grown-ups. We approach things like grown-ups, and we deal with things like adults. The truth is with Ben, he's immature. He likes to talk about, it's about the fights, it's about this. All he cares about, he cries where he is on the table. He cries where he's standing, and it's tiring. And that's what people have enough of. And this is just, He says, "Oh, you've now seen what happens in front of the cameras. Can you imagine what it's been like for me over the last year or 2 years, like behind the cameras?" He's playing a victim when actually he's caused all of this himself. He has not made, and people, look, it's easy for me to see. I don't need Ben Shalom, right, in my life, as in I don't need anything from him. If you speak to everyone in the boxing business, try and find someone that says a good word about him outside of people that need him. So that's just my honest opinion. And it's quite frustrating because you watch these interviews and he's like, "Oh, it's so difficult for me. I'm getting pushed out." But make some friends then. That's all I'd say. And again, I'm sure you can find people, Charlie, who don't like me, right? Unfortunately, in life, we're not always all going to get on, right? But there seems to be a unanimous view with this guy.
How do you go from the relationship that you guys had with Queensbury and Frank Warren, where I sat with you in the back of a car with Big Turbo, and you're talking about, headlocking DAZN and fighting DAZN to actually getting on quite well with him, and everyone thinking, yeah, you know what, he's pretty sound. Same with Andy Ayling. I could give loads of examples. How do you go from that situation to an amicable situation with Boxer? Does he WhatsApp you and go like, "Bro, let's sort it out," and you go for a bit of food? Like, what's the process, Frank?
But I've been there with him, and this is where I come back to. The guy's a pathological liar and he can't help himself. That's just the reality of it. There's been so many moments. What's that?
What do you mean by that?
He says one thing and does something else.
In terms of relationship wise?
Yeah, just like he constantly just says things. And look, you also, Charlie, there's also things, I hear everything. We're in a very small business, right? Everyone talks. So he says things about people. He says, "Oh, go and spread this," and I'm not here for it. I don't care. I'm busy. I've got a lot going on. I don't ring you and go, you know, "This is Ben's done this, blah, 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 blah." I'll tell you if, I find it interesting and we're in the same room, but I ain't going out my way, wasting my time to try and spread rumors. How does it change? He has to grow up. He has to grow up and he has to just, you say, like you go on about there, our relationship in the past with DAZN, Andy Ayling, Frank Warren, whatever it is. And that was a much worse position than the Ben Shalom piece, wasn't it? That was going on for 15 years or whatever, 10, 15 years. That was back and forth saying some awful things about each other, where actually in the end you go, "Do you know what? He's actually all right."
So it can be fixed.
But he has to change his personality, which I don't think he can do, because he is a pathological liar and he can't help himself. And he's also desperate. So he does things out of desperation. I don't know what it's like to be him. I don't know what it's like to have been through what he's been through. But I'm a young guy in the sport. I'm 32 years old. I've worked my way through this business and, had hard times, good times, bad times, whatever. And again, you don't always get on with everyone. That's the reality of it. I'm sure you'll find people who don't like me for whatever reason, who don't like Eddie or don't like Frank Warren. Do you know what I mean? Of course, there are people out there, you're never going to get on with everyone. But again, I just come back to the point of this seems quite unanimous. And you have to ask yourself why. It's not about competition. Look at the rest of us. Look at Calla and Nissa, got a great relationship with Calla and Nissa. Look at Frank Warren. But it's not that we're all just ganging up on this one bloke. It's ask yourself why. Because if we didn't want competition, then we'd all hate each other, wouldn't we? Like, I wouldn't talk to Calla Sowden and Nissa Sowden. I'm like, I've known them, I'm like that with them. Frank Warren, I think, is hilarious now. I've spent some time with him, get on really well with Jules Warren. So it's not that we've now all just come together and gone, right, let's go after this guy. It's just, again, think about it. Ask yourself why. And again, I've said a lot of things in the past, so people think I'm jealous of him. I'm not jealous of anyone. I'm the least jealous person you could meet. I want everyone to do well. But when people don't operate in the right way, it's hard to change your view
on. Lastly, from me, interesting one, and I'm kind of not surprised. It looks like, we don't know for sure, hence why I'm asking you, that they're exploring new opponents for Daniel Dubois next. Now, the initial plan, I know what AJ's like, I know what his team are like. We can beat him. Let's take the rematch. It always felt a little bit from I can't put on a promoter's hat, but if I was to put your hat on, Frank, I would maybe wait for the outcome of December the 21st and see what goes on there. Where are you at right now? Why are they potentially exploring other options for Daniel?
Well, I think it's a process that's ongoing as to what's next, timelines, etc. I think we'll see news very soon. AJ has got a lot of options. He's always got a lot of options. He's still the biggest name or one of the biggest names in boxing. But he's always been up for any challenge. But there's a lot of things that go into it that have to make sense. So I think when news is ready for that, it'll be out there as to what's next. But no decision's been made.
They said they'd like to get an opponent wrapped up with the next week to 2 weeks. If they were to do that, that means AJ definitely wouldn't sit out for December 21st. Do you expect to find out within the next week to 2 weeks?
Yeah, look, it's a process that's going to play out over the next week for sure.
Very coy with your answers as always, Francis.
I am very good at being coy, unless I'm not being coy.
Thank you very much for your time. I will see you in London next week before I see you in Manchester.
Thank you, mate. I'm looking forward. Well, no, I won't see you in London. I'm going straight to Manchester. See you there.
On what day?
Wednesday.
But you're not doing anything on the Wednesday, are you?
Here we are. We've got a community event on the Wednesday, and then we've got an event at Man City at the Fan Park before. Do they play in the Champions League on Wednesday nights or something? I don't know.
Everyone's leaving the office and I've still got people waiting on me for further calls. Shout out Alex Legavelle on the old community thing. I know he'll appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I'd be delighted you said that, especially in that rascal shirt.
They can't actually see, Francis. See you later, mate. Have a lovely afternoon.